Acts chapter 25. 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, he went up from Caesarea to Jerusalem, where the chief priests and the leaders of the Jews gave him a report against Paul. They appealed him and requested as a favor to them against Paul to have him transferred to Jerusalem. There, where in fact they were planning an ambush to kill him along the way. Festus replied that Paul was being kept at Caesarea, and he said he himself intended to go there shortly. So he said, "Let those of you who have authority come with me, and if there is anything wrong about that man, let them accuse him." After they had stayed among them for more than 8 or 10 days, they went to Caesarea, and the next day he took their seat on the tribunal and ordered Paul to be brought. When he arrived, the Jews who had gone from Jerusalem surrounded him, bringing many serious charges against him, which they could not prove. Paul said in their defense, "I have no way of committing offenses against the law of the Jews, or against the temple, or against the empire, or against the emperor." But Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, "Don't you wish to go to Jerusalem and be tried there before me on these charges?" And Paul said, "I am appealing to the emperor's tribunal. This is where I should be tried. I have done nothing wrong to the Jews, as you very well know. Now, if I am wrong and have committed something for I deserve to die, I am not trying to escape death. But if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can turn over to them. I appeal to the emperor." Then Festus, after he had conferred with the council, he replied, "You have appealed the emperor, so the emperor will let you go." After several days had passed, King of Epirus and Bernicia arrived at Caesarea to welcome Festus. Since they were staying there several days, Festus laid Paul's cast before the king, saying, This was the man who was left in the prison of Felix. When I was in Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders informed me of him and asked me to sentence him. I told them that there was no custom of the Romans to hand over anyone before the accuser had met the accusers. Before the accused had met the accuser face to face and given an opportunity to make defenses against the charge. So when he met them there, I lost no time. But on the next day I took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought. When the accusers stood up, they did not charge him with any crime, but that I was expecting. Instead, they had certain points of disagreement with him about their own religion and about the certain Jesus who had died, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. Since I was at the loss of how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wished to go to Jerusalem or to be there on these charges. But when Paul had appealed to be kept in custody for the decision of his imperial master, I ordered him to be held until I could see him to the emperor. Epirus said to Festus, "I would like to hear the man to myself." "Tomorrow," he said, you will hear him." Paul brought before Epirus. So on the next day, Epirus and Bernicia came to with a great pomp. They entered the audience hall by the military triumph and the prominent men of the city. Then Festus gave an order, and Paul was brought in. Then Festus said, "King Agrippa, and all here present with us, you can see the man about whom the whole Jewish community petitioned me. both in Jerusalem here and shouting that he ought not to live any longer. But I found that he had done nothing deserving death. And when he appealed to his imperial majesty, I decided to send him. But I have nothing definite to write about our sovereign about him. Therefore, I brought you him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that we may examine him. So before we examined him, I may have something to write, for it seems unreasonable for me to write a prisoner without indicating charges against him. Acts chapter 26. Agrippa said to Paul, "If you have permission to speak for yourself, then Paul stretched out his hand and began to defend himself. I consider myself fortunate that it is before you, King Agrippa, that I am to make my defense today, all of the accusers of the Jews, because you are especially familiar with all the customs and conversions, all of the Jews. Therefore I beg you to listen to me patiently. All of the Jews know my way of life from a youth, a life spending from the beginning among your own people in Jerusalem. They have known for a long time if they are willing to testify and belong to a strict sect of the religion and live in the Pharisee. Now I stand here on trial on account of my hope in the promise made by God to our ancestors, a promise that our 12 tribes hope to attend their earnest worship day and night. All is for hope, Your Excellency, that I am accused by the Jews. Why is it that you thought incredibly that any of you that God raised the dead? Indeed, I myself was convinced that I ought to do many things against the name of Jesus Christ, of Jesus of Nazareth, and this that I did in Jerusalem with the authority received from the chief priests. I was not only locked up many of saints in prison, but I also cast my vote against them when they were being condemned to death. By punishing them, and often in the synagogue, I tried to force them to blaspheme me, and since I was being engaged in them, I pursued them even to foreign countries. With this in mind, I was traveling to Damascus with the authorities and commissions of the chief priests, when at midday along the road, Your Excellency, I saw a light under the heaven, brightened with the sun, shining around me and my companion. When we had all fallen to the ground, I heard a voice in the Hebrew language, "Saul, Saul, why are you screaming? But what is it hurt to kick you against the gourd?" And I asked, "Who are you, Lord?" And the Lord answered, "I am Jesus, whom you persecuted. But get up and stand on your feet, for I have appeared to you for this purpose. I have appointed you to serve and testify to things in which you have seen me, and in those which I have appeared to you. I will rescue you from your people and from Galilee, for whom I am sending you, to open the eyes so that you may be turned away from the darkness, to light the power of Satan to God, so that they may receive forgiveness of sins and a place among those who are sanctified by faith." After that, King Agrippa, I was not disobedient to the heavenly visions, but declared those in Damascus, then Jerusalem, and throughout the countryside of Judea, and also to the Gentiles, where they should repent and turn to God, and do deeds consistent to the repentance For this reason the Jews seized me in the temple and tried to kill me. To this day I have help from God. I have hope from God, and so I stand here, testifying to both small and great, saying nothing but what the prophets and Moses said would take place, and that the Messiah would suffer, and that, being the first to rise from the dead, he would proclaim light both to our people and to the Gentiles. While he was making the descent, Festus exclaimed, "You are out of your mind, Paul. Too much learning is driving you insane." Paul said, "I am not out of my mind, most excellent Festus, but I am speaking with sober truth. Indeed, the king knows that there are things to him I speak freely. For I am certain there are none of these has accepted his notice, for they are not for this they are not done in a corner. King Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you believe." Agrippa said to Paul, "Are you so quickly pursuing me to becoming a Christian?" Paul replied, "Whether quicker or not, I pray to God that not only you, but also all who are listening to me today might become such as I am, except for these chains." The king got up, and with him the governor of Bernicia. And as they were leaving, they said to one another, "This man is doing nothing to deserve death or imprisonment." Agrippa said to Festus, "This man could be set free if he was not appealed to the emperor." Paul sails to Rome, chapter 24. When it was decided, 27. When it was decided we were to sail for Israel, they were transferred, Paul and some other prisoners, to Centuria of the Augustan court named Julius. Remarking on a ship of Adramar that they were about to set sail to the ports along the coast of Asia, we were put to the sea, commanded by Archelaus, a Macedonian, to Thessalon. The next day we put in Sidon. Julius treated Paul kindly and allowed him and his friends to be cared for. Putting out to the sea from there, we sailed under the lee of Carpus, because the winds were against us. After we sailed across the sea off us Sensia and Pamphylia, we came to Mara in Larissa. There a centurion found an Alexandria ship bound for Italy and put us on board. We sailed slowly for a number of days and arrived with difficulty on Cynthia. As they were wired, as the wind was against us, we sailed under the lee of Creta of Salima. Sailing past with difficulty, we passed some called Fair Havens, near the city of Larissa. Since much time had been lost, sailing was now dangerous, because even fast already gone by, and even the fast had gone by. Paul advised them, saying, "Sirs, I can see that the voyage will be danger and much heavy loss, and not only of the cargo and the ship, but also our lives." But the centaur paid more attention to the pilot and the owner of the ship than what Paul said. Since the harbor was not suitable for spending the winter, the major of favor put to sea from there, on a chance somehow to reach Phoenix, where they could spend the winter. It was a harbor in Creta, facing southwest and northwest. When moderated south wind became the blow, they thought they could achieve their purpose, so they weighed down the anchor and began to pass Creta, close to the shore. But when a violent wind reached the northeastern and rushed down Sisera, since the ship was caught and could not be turned head on the wind, and gave the way to it, was driven. By running under a small lee of the small island called Katia, it was scarcely able to get the ship boat under control. After hoisting it up, they took measures of the undergird of the ship, and then, fearing that they would run on Sisera, they followed the sea anchor and so were driven. We were able to pound by the storm so violent that the next day they began to throw the cargo overboard. On the third day, with their own hand, they threw the ship's tackle overboard. With no sun nor stars appeared for many days, and no tempest raged, our hopes of being saved was last abandoned. Since without food or water, Paul then stood among them and said, Men, you shall listen to me and not sail from Creta, and thereby avoid this damage and loss. I urge you now to keep the courage, for there was no loss of life among you, but only ship. For last night there stood by me an angel of God, and whom I belong and whom I worship. And he said, Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand before the empire, and indeed God has granted you safety of all those who are sailing with you. So keep up courage, men, for I have faith in God, that will exactly as I have been told. But we have run aground some island. On the 14th night had come, and they were drifting across the Sea of Adria. About midnight, the sailors suspected that they were nearing land, so they took surroundings and found 12 fathoms. A little farther, they took surroundings and found 15 fathoms. Fearing that they might run into rocks, they let four anchors on the stern and prayed for a day to come. But when the sailors tried to escape from the boat and escape from the ship and lowered the boat into the sea, on a pretext of putting the anchors from the bow, Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, Unless these men can stay on the ship, you cannot be saved. Then the soldiers cut away the ropes of the boat and set adrift. Before daybreak, Paul urged all of them to take some food, saying, Today is the 14th day. You have been in suspense and remaining without food and have eaten nothing, and therefore I urge you to take some food, and for helping you to survive, for none of you will lose a hair on your heads. After he said this, he took bread, giving thanks to God in the presence of all, and broke it and began to eat. And there they were encouraged and took food for themselves. We were in there, all 276 persons on the ship. After we had satisfied with their hunger, they lightened the ship by throwing the wheat into the sea. The shipwreck. In the morning they did not recognize the land, but they noticed the bay on the beach, on which they could plant to see ashore if they could. So they cast off the anchors and left them in the sea. At the same time they loosened the rope that tied the steering oars. Then, hoisting the foresails to the wind, they made the beach. But striking a reef, they ran the ship aground. A bow struck, remaining immovable, but the stern was broken by the force of waves. The soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners, so none of them might swim away and escape. But the Sisera, wishing to save Paul, had kept them from carrying out their plan. They ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and make for those who land. So the rest of them, some on planks, some on pieces of the ship, and it was so. All were brought safely to land.